Oh, cool.
I love Malaysia.
Thank you. I love you.开心吗？讲中文都听得懂吗？哇，这么厉害！往年之前都每年会来2次马来西亚，但今年好像有点少。今年是我跟他第一次来马来西亚，今年，对吗？所以希望之后可以更多的机会跟着大家，跟着成员一起来到马来西亚跟你们见面，好不好？最后大家用其他语言说，我用中文讲，我们爱马来西亚的人。谢谢。
선물이 있습니다. 아, 괜찮아요.
There is a present for you.
네, 그렇지.
이것이 줄 선물이
아니야, 아니야.
This is a gift for you.
좋아하잖아. 좋아. What's wrong with you? Okay, go, boss. Boss. 오늘 이 말레이시아 공연이
This Malaysian performance today we had.
이제 저희 슈퍼쇼 5의 거의 마지막 나라예요.
Malaysia is almost the last destination in this year in Super Show 5.
근데 오늘 이렇게 여러분이 멋진 기억을 만들어 주셔서
Because of you have made us such a good memory, fans.
슈퍼쇼 5가 잘 마무리되어 가고 있는 것 같아요.
I believe that Super Show 5 has been ended successfully.
네, 제 바람이 있다면 저희도 슈퍼쇼 6로 꼭 다시 여러분을 만나고 싶은데요.
If there is a wish from me, I will make sure I'd like to see you again in Super Show 6.
물론 그때는 또 이 자리에 없는 다른 멤버들과 함께 오고 싶고요.
Make sure to coming back with another member staff who weren't here today.
근데 생각해봤는데
I've been thinking.
항상 저희가 다시 오겠다고 약속을 드리는 게 중요한 게 아닌 것 같더라고요.
I don't think it is important to make a word to saying that I will coming back.
왜냐면 다시 왔는데 여러분이 안 계시면 저희는 공연을 할 수가 없거든요.
Because if it weren't for you, it's just pointless to mention it.
네, 그러니까 여러분이 저희에게 약속을 해주셨으면 좋겠어요.
So I'd like to hear a promise from you.
저희가 슈퍼쇼 6를 또 다시 하게 되면 다 와주실 건가요?
Would you come here again?
근데 진짜 한국말을 잘 알아들으시네요.
I'm surprised you all understand in Korean. In fact, you're all Koreans, right?
자, 약속하신 거죠? 자, 여러분이 약속을 해주신다면 저희가 꼭 더 멋진 공연으로 여러분 앞에 다시 오도록 하겠습니다.
If you can make a promise, I will make sure to come back with members to better performances.
이렇게 말레이시아에서는 항상 또 좋은 기억만 안고 가네요.
I always have good memories here in Malaysia.
네, 아쉽지만 저희 슈퍼쇼 5의 마지막 곡을 들려드리도록 하겠습니다.
I'm really sad to say this, but this is going to be our last song today.
여러분 즐거우셨죠?
Have you all had fun?
자, 너무 싫었다. 내보내주세요.
Please let it out of here.
사진 찍을게요.
아니, 제가 다음 곡을 위해서 이렇게 또 분위기를 잘 잡았는데
네.
For the next performance, I have the good atmosphere just now.
역시 저희 슈퍼주니어는 항상 이렇게 즐겁고 신나는 게 저희의 매력인 것 같아요, 그죠?
네.
We're charming that Super Junior is always cheerful and energetic.
여러분도 저희한테 길들여져서 중이어서 그런지 저희가 분위기 잡으려고 하면 되게 어색해하더라고요.
If you already got used to Super Junior, that when we got into the sad mood, you are not used to it.
자, 그러면 마지막 곡까지 즐거운 마음으로 여러분과 함께 하도록 하겠습니다.
Let's have a go with the last performance with an energetic atmosphere.
자, 다 함께 불러주세요.
Let's sing along together, please.
So I 들려드릴게요.
Even more so, you're seeing companies like Cisco who are investing in MetaCloud and doing hosted offerings. You're seeing IBM buy Blue Box, they're doing hosted offerings. You're seeing EMC buy VirtuStream, they're doing more hosted offerings. I think there's becoming more of a realization by the vendor community that a lot of these companies trust that I've got to offer you things that aren't, private first. They're really sort of public or hosted first. And that changes the mindset. You're going to see a new set of tooling around that. You're going to see, better ways to leverage these on-demand resources. So, while we said that hybrid has sort of struggled up until this point, I think we're beginning to see a tipping point that the way companies are going to engage their vendors and their technology is going to be more in line with that. Help me move faster. Help me, align cost to that business opportunity.
Yeah, and so much of that struggle has been just because it's not something that I just buy on a SKU.
Right.
It's something that I have to put together. So let's kind of get down to specifics.
Yes.
If we're talking to a CIO today,
right,
and saying, okay, am I a broker of services now? Is that if it's that multi-cloud, multi-environment, am I just helping choose them and doing? Am I now the chief integration officer? Am I a broker of services? What's the CIO's role in helping to put together that hybrid cloud strategy?
Yeah, I believe in that. I believe that philosophy of sort of broker of services, manager of multiple clouds. The way to think about that is think about it just like your financial controller or as a CIO. You have projects that come in. You can assign a priority to them. You can assign a cost to them, and you can assign what's the best way to cut. You should look at your clouds or your data centers as just like those sort of resources. I should be able to normalize them. I should be able to say this is a cost for this and a cost for that. As a CIO, you should be pushing towards that. And you may realize not only does that help you do more things faster, but it's also going to drive efficiencies inside your own data center because you have to say my costs need to be relatively aligned. Maybe not exactly the same, but relatively aligned for certain projects.
Okay, let's look at the chief technology officer.
Yep.
So, one of the biggest things we've pushed here at Wikibon is that companies need to get rid of the undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Right.
All too often we see, what am I spending my time on and how does that drive back to the business? So what's your advice for the CTO as to how he looks at the technology segment today?
Yeah, there's a great quote. We did some work with the CIO of Royal Philips a couple months ago, and his CEO flat out told him 85% of the spend that you guys have is going towards undifferentiated things. Andy Jassy from AWS likes to call it undifferentiated heavy lifting. Those are those applications that you look at them and you go in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, they drove productivity improvement for your workers, email and ERP systems and those types of CRM systems. Nowadays, everybody has one. They're all exactly the same. And that's why you're seeing a huge growth in them becoming SaaS applications. You're seeing Office 365, you're seeing Workday, you're seeing Salesforce and other things. That's a huge opportunity to help take cost out of the business, in terms of moving from a big monolithic thing to a SaaS application. That doesn't necessarily make your business go any faster, but it is one way if you're not doing custom development to go, I can drive us to be faster. I can make it simpler and a better experience for my end users.
Okay, and if we bubble up to the CEO, what does hybrid cloud mean to the company overall? What should the CEO be thinking about that and the role of IT in general underneath him?
Well, I think it goes back to the first comment I made. The CEO needs to be able to go sit at the table with his staff and look at every single one of them and say, look, I need every single one of you, no matter what discipline you're in, to say, business opportunity to business execution, how fast can you make that for me? Or how efficient can you make that? And if IT struggles for that efficiency, that idea to execution, because they're not using hybrid resources, then this CEO is going to start looking for other people to run it, or they're going to look for other ways to solve that. So it's not just an IT problem, but the problem is IT is sort of the last to adopt this model. Every other discipline at that table has already adopted it and is well on their way.
Okay, so last piece I want to ask you, Brian, is what about the vendor ecosystem? What are we missing out there in the marketplace today? What do you want to see from the vendor community to help make this easier for the practitioners?
Right. I want to see the vendors, realize that public cloud market that you looked at as competitive, you've got to interoperate with it. You may have ways to compete with it, but you've got to interoperate with it. You've got to think, how do I help my customers if they decide to go public first and then want to integrate their private environments or multiple clouds? And I want to see them, begin to understand that this is not just about selling more into the private space. It's how do I help that business, again, from idea to execution. And not enough of them are doing it today. Too many of them are trying to completely lock it in from a vendor perspective, and I think that's going to backfire on a lot of them because some of them aren't moving fast enough to lock them in.
Yeah, it's interesting if you think about kind of the big cloud players today. Google's made a lot of interesting partnership announcements, and we've wondered if they're serious about trying to take a big part of the market.
Right.
Microsoft has been working, obviously to grow what they're doing in both, Azure,
right.
In the public cloud and in private cloud, but they're also starting to do some partnerships, and they're heavily engaged in certain environments. Amazon is the one that, isn't partnering with the big traditional companies all that much, and is usually enemy number one for a bunch of the companies out there. So do you really expect that, we're going to see public cloud and, more traditional infrastructure vendors working together?
I think we already are. So we talked about this yesterday on a show. You've got Google partnering with VMware as a way to get into the enterprise. You've got Microsoft, 25% of Azure is Linux hosts. So are they partnering? No, not necessarily, but they're more open about what's available. It's not just Windows. And if you look at Amazon, you could say Amazon's the greatest lock-in, but at the same time, the ecosystem of SaaS companies that work with Amazon is enormous. And so they give you as much choice as you want for logging and monitoring and application enablement and all those sort of things. So there's choice within those ecosystems. There's not yet choice to where they look completely ubiquitous. And I think it really comes down to what applications do I have? What am I trying to drive with them? One of the possibilities, and this is what we're all sort of hoping for, and we'll see where it plays out, is what does Docker do in all this? Does Docker become the great unifier as a container to let you move things around, or does it just become another sort of locked-in technology down the road, depending on how it plays out?
All right, so Brian, you've talked to lots of practitioners in this space. What's on the last word on this? What's the biggest misconception you see out there that if we could just get beyond this, maybe we can move things forward?
I think the biggest misconception is this premise that they're going to constantly move stuff back and forth. I think the reality is wherever your heavy data is where it's going to reside, and you have to think of ways to move around that, whether it's partially replicating enough to build a new application, but the whole premise of like lots and lots of movement, get away from that type of thinking. It's too complicated from a data perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Storage is often a challenge and a limiter. There's big opportunities to do changes here, but need to take strong consideration into that because I haven't heard IBM research come up with breaking the laws of physics just yet.
Right. That's
so,
right.
Or anybody else for that matter. So, Brian, excellent stuff. Look forward to talking to you much more on this. Reading the research. Of course, go to wikibon.com to catch all the research. Catch us on video at siliconangle.tv, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter with any questions you have, other areas you'd like us to dig deeper into. And thank you so much for watching.